If I handed you two gardens today, which one would you choose? The first is a large backyard with plenty of empty soil. The second is just 6 containers sitting on a small balcony. Most people would choose the backyard without thinking twice. But here's the surprising part, in many cases, the containers can produce more food. Not because they're bigger. Not because they're expensive. And certainly not because they use some miracle fertilizer. They win because every inch is working harder. That's the secret almost nobody talks about. Most gardeners believe the biggest harvest comes from the biggest garden. In reality, the biggest harvest often comes from the smartest garden. I've seen people harvest baskets of vegetables from a space no larger than a parking spot, while others struggle to fill a single salad bowl from gardens 10 times the size. The difference isn't luck. It isn't experience. And it definitely isn't having a green thumb. It's knowing which vegetables deserve your precious space, and which ones don't. Here's a mistake nearly every beginner makes. They buy seeds based only on what they enjoy eating. It sounds logical. But some vegetables occupy valuable space for months and produce very little. Others quietly keep producing week after week, turning one simple container into a miniature food factory. Once you understand the difference, you'll never look at container gardening the same way again. And that's exactly what this video is about. Today, we're counting down the 20 vegetables that consistently deliver the biggest harvests in the smallest spaces. Some climb upward and transform empty air into growing space. Some let you harvest from the same plant again and again without pulling it out. Others produce so much that you'll be sharing your harvest with friends and neighbors before the season is over. But don't skip ahead. The order matters. The vegetables near the end completely change how productive a container garden can become, and my number one choice surprises almost everyone because it outperforms many vegetables people automatically assume are the highest yielding. Along the way, I'll also reveal the simple mistakes that quietly reduce harvests, even when your plants appear healthy. Avoiding just one of these mistakes can dramatically increase what a single container produces over an entire growing season. And one tip near the end is so effective that experienced gardeners rely on it every year, yet many beginners have never heard of it. So whether you have a tiny balcony, a sunny patio, a narrow porch, or just a few pots beside your back door, don't assume you need more land to grow more food. You don't. You simply need the right plants, grown the right way. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which vegetables deserve a place in your containers and which ones are worth skipping if your goal is maximum harvest. Let's begin with a plant that many gardeners underestimate because it looks small and ordinary at first. But once it gets established, it becomes one of the most reliable producers in a container garden. And the way you harvest it makes all the difference. Let's get started. Number 20, Swiss chard, the plant that refuses to quit. At number 20 is a vegetable that rarely gets the attention it deserves, yet it quietly outperforms many more popular crops. Swiss chard. At first glance, it doesn't look extraordinary. But that's exactly why so many gardeners underestimate it. The real surprise comes after your first harvest. Most beginners make one big mistake. They pull the entire plant from the container, thinking it's finished. It isn't. Swiss chard is designed to keep producing. Instead of harvesting everything, remove only the large outer leaves and leave the young center leaves untouched. Within days, fresh leaves begin replacing the ones you picked. Repeat this simple method, and one healthy plant can provide harvest after harvest for months. It's one of the easiest, cut-and-come-again, vegetables you can grow. Another reason Swiss chard shines in containers is its resilience. Unlike many leafy greens that struggle when temperatures rise, Swiss chard keeps growing through heat, cool nights, and changing weather with very little complaint. That means fewer failed crops and a more dependable harvest. Its colorful stems, bright red, yellow, orange, and pink, also make your containers look beautiful while producing nutritious food. Give it a container at least 10 inches deep, rich compost, and 6 or more hours of sunlight, and it will reward you with continuous harvests for much of the growing season. But don't over-harvest. Always leave the center growing point untouched. That's the engine that keeps producing new leaves. Now let's move to a plant almost everyone buys from the grocery store again and again, without realizing how incredibly easy it is to grow at home. Number 19. Green onions, the endless kitchen staple. Imagine walking outside whenever you're making soup, fried rice, noodles, salads, or scrambled eggs, and cutting fresh green onions whenever you need them. No grocery trip. No plastic packaging. Just fresh harvests whenever dinner calls for them. That's exactly why green onions deserve a place in almost every container garden. They require very little space. In fact, dozens of plants can grow together in a single container without competing heavily. But here's what surprises most people. You don't always have to harvest the entire plant. Instead, cut the green tops about an inch above the soil, leaving the white base and roots in place. In many cases, fresh green leaves grow back, allowing you to harvest the same planting multiple times. It's one of the simplest ways to increase productivity without planting more seeds. Green onions also mature quickly, making them perfect for beginners who want early success. Keep the soil evenly moist, provide plenty of sunlight, and feed lightly with compost every few weeks. That's usually all they need. One common mistake, however, is keeping the soil constantly soggy. Green onions enjoy moisture, but waterlogged soil can weaken their roots and slow growth. A well-draining potting mix makes a huge difference. These two vegetables already prove an important lesson. High productivity isn't always about growing giant plants. Sometimes it's about choosing crops that keep giving instead of producing only once. And the next vegetable takes that idea even further. It grows so quickly that many gardeners are harvesting it before some other crops have even begun to flower. Number 18. Arugula, from seed to salad in just a few weeks. If you're the kind of gardener who hates waiting months for results, this next vegetable is going to become one of your favorites. Arugula is one of the fastest growing edible plants you can grow in a container. In as little as 3 to 4 weeks, those tiny seeds transform into a fresh harvest that's ready for your kitchen. That quick success is more than just satisfying, it keeps new gardeners motivated. But here's where many people accidentally shorten their harvest. They pull the entire plant the first time they pick it. Instead, harvest only the larger outer leaves and leave the small center leaves untouched. The plant responds by producing new growth, giving you multiple harvests from a single sowing. This simple technique can turn one container into weeks of fresh salads. Arugula also makes excellent use of small spaces because it doesn't need a deep pot. A container just 6 to 8 inches deep is enough for healthy growth, making it perfect for balconies, patios, and even sunny windowsills. Its peppery flavor adds a fresh kick to salads, sandwiches, pizzas, and pasta dishes, making it one of the most useful leafy greens to have close to the kitchen. One thing to remember is that arugula prefers cooler weather. During hot summer days, provide afternoon shade if possible and keep the soil evenly moist. Excessive heat can cause the plant to flower early, making the leaves stronger and more bitter. Here's another trick many experienced gardeners use. Instead of planting one large container all at once, sow a few seeds every 2 weeks. This simple practice, called succession planting, gives you a continuous supply of tender leaves throughout the season instead of one large harvest all at once. Fast, flavorful, productive, and beginner-friendly, arugula earns its place on this list. But the next vegetable grows just as quickly while offering something completely different. Instead of harvesting individual leaves, you'll soon have thick, crisp heads perfect for stir-fries, soups, and fresh salads. Number 17. Bok choy, small plant, big rewards. Bok choy is proof that a compact vegetable can deliver an impressive harvest without demanding much space. From the moment the seeds germinate, it grows with remarkable speed. Depending on the variety, many plants are ready to harvest in just 30 to 45 days. That means while slower vegetables are still developing, bok choy is already filling your kitchen. Its compact root system makes it ideal for containers, raised beds, and small balcony gardens. But one feature makes it especially versatile. You don't have to wait for full-sized plants. Harvest baby bok choy early for tender salads and quick stir-fries, or let the plants mature into larger, crunchy heads packed with flavor. Either approach gives you a rewarding harvest. To grow healthy bok choy, use fertile, well-draining soil and keep it consistently moist. Like many leafy vegetables, it dislikes drying out completely. During periods of intense heat, provide some afternoon shade to reduce the risk of bolting, which causes the plant to flower early and reduces leaf quality. A layer of mulch on top of the soil also helps retain moisture and keeps the roots cooler during warm weather. One of the reasons gardeners love bok choy is its reliability. It grows quickly, looks attractive in containers, and produces a satisfying harvest without requiring constant attention. By now, you've probably noticed a pattern. The highest yield container gardens aren't filled with plants that demand endless care. They're filled with crops that grow efficiently, recover quickly, and reward simple, consistent effort. And now it's time to move beyond leafy greens. The next vegetable grows underground, but when you finally pull it from the soil, the harvest often surprises even experienced gardeners. Number 16. Carrots, the underground surprise. There's something uniquely satisfying about growing a vegetable you can't actually see. For weeks, all you notice are soft, feathery green leaves gently swaying above the soil. It doesn't look like much, and many beginners start wondering if anything is happening below the surface. Then comes harvest day. You grip the leafy tops, pull gently, and suddenly a bright orange carrot slides out of the soil, often much larger than you expected. That's one of the reasons carrots never lose their appeal. Contrary to popular belief, you don't need a large garden to grow them successfully. What carrots really need is depth, not width. Choose a container at least 12 inches deep and fill it with loose, stone-free potting mix. Soft soil allows the roots to grow straight instead of becoming twisted or forked. For smaller containers, choose short or round carrot varieties bred specifically for pots. They mature faster and still deliver excellent flavor. Here's the mistake that ruins more container carrots than almost anything else. Many gardeners sow the seeds too close together. Crowded seedlings compete for space, producing thin, undersized roots instead of thick, healthy carrots. After germination, thin the seedlings so each plant has enough room to develop properly. It may feel wasteful at first, but you'll be rewarded with a much better harvest. Keep the soil evenly moist during germination because carrot seeds can be slow to sprout. Once established, they require very little maintenance beyond regular watering and full sun. The best part? Homegrown carrots are often noticeably sweeter than store-bought ones because they can be harvested at their peak instead of being stored and transported for weeks. But if you like getting 2 harvests from one plant, the next vegetable offers exactly that. Number 15. Beets, 1 plant, 2 delicious harvests. Most people grow beets for their colorful roots. Experienced gardeners know they're getting much more than that. Before the roots are even ready, the young leaves can already be harvested and cooked just like spinach or Swiss chard. That means one container gives you 2 completely different crops. As the season continues, the roots slowly swell beneath the soil while fresh leaves continue growing above it. Beets thrive in containers because they don't require much horizontal space. A pot around 10 to 12 inches deep with fertile, well-draining soil is usually enough to produce beautiful roots. Their rich red, golden, or striped varieties also add striking color to any patio or balcony. One common mistake is harvesting too many leaves too early. Those leaves act like solar panels, collecting energy that the plant uses to build larger roots underground. Remove only a few outer leaves at a time, leaving plenty behind to keep the plant growing strongly. Consistent watering is also important. If the soil repeatedly swings from bone dry to soaking wet, the roots may crack or develop unevenly. A steady supply of moisture produces smoother, sweeter beets. And here's an unexpected bonus. Even if some roots stay small, they're still incredibly tender and flavorful. In fact, many chefs prefer smaller beets because of their sweeter taste and finer texture. Carrots and beets remind us that some of the most rewarding harvests happen where we can't even see them. But now we're about to move above ground again. To a vegetable that grows so fast and produces so generously that many gardeners end up picking fresh pods almost every single day during peak season. Number 14. Bush beans, the compact plant that keeps on giving. If someone told you a single container could provide fresh vegetables for dinner several times a week, you might think they're exaggerating. But that's exactly what healthy bush beans can do. Unlike their climbing relatives, bush beans stay compact, making them perfect for gardeners who don't have room for tall trellises or fences. Don't let their smaller size fool you. Once the plants begin flowering, tiny pods seem to appear almost overnight. And here's where the magic happens. The more often you harvest, the more flowers the plant produces. It's one of nature's most rewarding cycles. Pick regularly, and the plant keeps trying to make more beans. Leave mature pods on the plant for too long, however, and it assumes its job is finished. Instead of producing new flowers, it begins putting its energy into ripening seeds. That's why experienced gardeners check their bush beans every couple of days during peak season. Another reason bush beans deserve a place in your container garden is that they naturally improve the soil. Like other legumes, they work with beneficial bacteria to capture nitrogen from the air and make it available in the soil. While they still benefit from compost and healthy soil, they usually need less nitrogen fertilizer than many leafy vegetables. Give bush beans a container at least 10 to 12 inches deep, full sun, and consistent watering. Before long, you'll be harvesting crisp, tender pods perfect for steaming, stir-fries, soups, or freezing for later. For such a compact plant, the productivity is remarkable. But the next vegetable takes a completely different approach. Instead of staying low to the ground, it climbs toward the sky. Number 13. Snap peas, turning empty air into growing space. One of the biggest mistakes in small space gardening is forgetting that your garden has more than one dimension. Most people think only about the ground. Successful gardeners also use the air above it. That's exactly what snap peas do. Give them a simple trellis, a wire fence, or even a few strings stretched between poles, and they'll eagerly climb upward, transforming empty vertical space into a wall of fresh food. Within weeks, delicate white flowers appear. Soon after, crisp green pods begin hanging from the vines like ornaments. They're sweet enough to eat straight from the plant, making them a favorite among both children and adults. Snap peas thrive during the cooler parts of the growing season, making them an excellent choice for spring and fall container gardens. A container at least 12 inches deep with rich, well-draining soil provides plenty of room for healthy roots. One of the easiest ways to increase your harvest is simple. Pick the pods while they're young and tender. The longer mature pods remain on the vine, the sooner the plant slows down flower production. Frequent harvesting tells the plant to keep producing more. Another benefit of growing snap peas vertically is improved airflow. Better air circulation helps reduce moisture around the leaves, lowering the risk of common fungal diseases while making harvesting easier. As the vines continue climbing higher, your tiny container suddenly feels much larger than it really is. That's one of the greatest lessons in container gardening. Sometimes the secret isn't finding more space. It's learning to use the space you already have. And speaking of climbing plants, the next vegetable grows even faster, climbs even higher, and can turn one ordinary container into a living green curtain covered with fresh harvests throughout the season. Number 12. Cucumbers, one vine, dozens of fresh harvests. Ask a new gardener why they don't grow cucumbers in containers, and you'll often hear the same answer. They take up too much space. That would be true if you let the vines crawl across the ground. But the moment you guide them onto a trellis, everything changes. Instead of spreading several feet in every direction, the vines climb upward, turning a small container into a vertical harvest machine. Better airflow keeps the leaves drier, sunlight reaches more of the plant, and harvesting becomes much easier because every cucumber is hanging in plain sight. The real excitement begins when the first bright yellow flowers appear. Within days, tiny cucumbers start forming. And once the plant gets into its rhythm, you'll notice something surprising: new fruits seem to appear almost overnight. Here's the mistake that quietly cuts production in half. Many gardeners leave cucumbers on the vine too long because they want bigger fruit. Unfortunately, oversized cucumbers send the plant a signal that its job is nearly finished. Instead of producing more flowers, it begins focusing on maturing seeds. The solution is simple. Harvest cucumbers while they're young, firm, and at the ideal size for the variety you're growing. Frequent picking encourages the plant to keep flowering, which means more cucumbers throughout the season. Use a container that holds at least 5 gallons of soil, provide 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight, and keep the soil consistently moist. Cucumbers are thirsty plants, especially during hot weather, but they dislike sitting in soggy soil, so good drainage is essential. With just one healthy vine, you'll often harvest enough cucumbers for fresh salads, sandwiches, and homemade pickles all summer long. But if you think cucumbers love summer, the next plant practically lives for it. Number 11. Malabar spinach, the leafy vine that loves the heat. Every gardener has experienced it. Summer arrives, temperatures soar, and many leafy greens begin to struggle. Lettuce turns bitter, spinach bolts, and harvests slow to a crawl. That's when Malabar spinach takes over. Despite its name, it isn't true spinach at all. It's a vigorous tropical vine that actually thrives in the heat that causes many other leafy vegetables to fail. The hotter the weather becomes, the faster it seems to grow. Give it a sturdy trellis, balcony railing, or garden arch, and before long, vines begin climbing upward, creating a lush wall of edible greenery. Its thick, glossy leaves stay tender through much of the summer and can be picked continuously. Instead of harvesting the entire plant, simply pinch off the young shoots and outer leaves. New growth quickly replaces what you've taken, creating an almost endless supply of fresh greens. The leaves are excellent in stir-fries, soups, curries, and smoothies. They can also be eaten fresh when young, adding a mild, slightly earthy flavor to salads. Because Malabar spinach grows so vigorously, it appreciates rich soil, regular watering, and strong support as the vines become heavier. Many gardeners are amazed by how quickly one small seedling transforms into a towering green curtain. It proves an important lesson about choosing the right crop for the right season. Rather than fighting the summer heat, sometimes the smartest strategy is growing vegetables that actually enjoy it. And now we're entering the top 10. From this point forward, every plant on the list has earned a reputation for producing extraordinary harvests from surprisingly little space. The next one is so productive that many gardeners say a single healthy plant keeps them harvesting for months. Number 10. Kale, the plant that rewards every harvest. We've reached the top 10, and from this point on, every plant has earned its reputation by producing an impressive amount of food from a surprisingly small space. First is kale. At first, kale grows slowly, and some beginners wonder if it's worth the container space. Then something changes. The plant becomes stronger, its leaves grow larger, and before long you're harvesting fresh greens week after week. The secret is understanding how to harvest it. Many first-time gardeners make the mistake of cutting the newest leaves from the top. That slows the plant down. Instead, harvest the oldest leaves from the bottom while leaving the young center leaves untouched. Those center leaves are the plant's growing engine. Protect them, and kale will continue producing for months. This simple technique turns one container into a long-term source of nutritious greens. Another reason kale ranks so highly is its toughness. Unlike many leafy vegetables that fade when temperatures drop, kale often becomes sweeter after cool autumn nights. In many climates, it continues producing long after summer crops have finished. Give it a container at least 12 inches deep, rich compost, and 6 or more hours of sunlight. Water consistently, but avoid letting the soil stay waterlogged. One light feeding every few weeks with compost or an organic fertilizer helps keep new leaves coming. And here's something many gardeners discover by accident. The more consistently you harvest mature leaves, the more energy the plant directs into producing fresh growth. It's a simple habit that can dramatically extend your harvest season. But while kale fills your kitchen with nutritious greens, the next plant fills it with color. Number 9. Bell peppers, a colorful harvest that keeps coming. Bell peppers may not look like heavy producers when they're young. In fact, during the first few weeks, they seem to spend more time growing leaves than fruit. Be patient. Once flowering begins, the entire plant transforms. Small white blossoms appear across the branches, followed by tiny green peppers that slowly grow larger with each passing week. One healthy plant can produce multiple waves of peppers throughout the season if it's given the right care. The biggest secret? Sunlight. Bell peppers absolutely love warmth and bright light. Place them where they'll receive at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sun each day, and they'll reward you with stronger growth and heavier harvests. As the peppers become larger, the branches often become surprisingly heavy. Supporting the main stems with a simple stake helps prevent breakage during windy weather or after heavy rain. Another tip that many experienced gardeners follow is to harvest peppers regularly. Whether you pick them green or allow them to ripen into red, yellow, orange, or even purple, removing mature fruits encourages the plant to focus on producing more flowers instead of holding onto old fruit. Keep the soil evenly moist, feed the plant every few weeks with a balanced organic fertilizer, and avoid letting the container dry out completely during hot weather. The result is a steady supply of crisp, flavorful peppers that are perfect for salads, grilling, stuffing, stir-fries, and fresh snacks. And here's the exciting part. Everything you've seen so far is only leading up to the highest yield plants on this list. The next vegetable grows so quickly and produces so abundantly that many gardeners say they check it every single morning during peak season, because if they wait even one extra day, they'll miss another harvest. Number 8. Zucchini. One plant can keep a family harvesting. If you've ever talked to someone who grows zucchini, you've probably heard the same story. I planted one, and I had more zucchini than I knew what to do with. It sounds like an exaggeration. Until you grow one yourself. Zucchini has earned its reputation as one of the most productive vegetables in the home garden because it wastes very little time. Once the plant is established, large yellow flowers begin appearing almost every day. Soon after, those flowers transform into fast-growing fruits that seem to double in size overnight. That's why experienced gardeners make a habit of checking their zucchini plants every morning. Miss just a couple of days, and a perfectly sized zucchini can become much larger than you expected. Here's the secret that keeps production going. Don't wait for giant fruits. Harvest zucchini when they're about 6 to 8 inches long. At this stage, they're more tender, sweeter, and the plant quickly redirects its energy into producing even more flowers and fruit. Another trick is to remove damaged or aging leaves near the base of the plant. This improves airflow, helps sunlight reach developing fruit, and can reduce the risk of fungal diseases. Because zucchini is a heavy feeder, it appreciates nutrient-rich soil from the very beginning. A container holding at least 15 gallons of soil gives the roots enough room to support months of production. Consistent watering is just as important. Allowing the soil to swing between very dry and very wet can stress the plant and reduce both fruit quality and overall yield. With proper care, it's not unusual for a single healthy plant to provide enough harvests for grilling, baking, soups, stir-fries, and even sharing with neighbors. But if zucchini is generous, the next plant takes abundance to an entirely different level. Number 7. Cherry tomatoes, hundreds of sweet rewards from one plant. If there were a hall of fame for container vegetables, cherry tomatoes would almost certainly have a place in it. Unlike larger tomato varieties that invest their energy into producing fewer, heavier fruits, cherry tomatoes follow a different strategy. They produce lots of flowers. Lots of fruit. And they just keep going. A single healthy plant can reward you with hundreds of sweet, bite-sized tomatoes over the course of one growing season. That's why so many experienced gardeners recommend them to beginners. They're productive, forgiving, and incredibly satisfying to grow. The key to success starts before the plant even begins producing fruit. Install a sturdy cage, stake, or trellis while the plant is still young. Waiting until the branches are loaded with tomatoes makes supporting the plant much more difficult and can damage the roots. As clusters of green tomatoes begin forming, you'll notice the plant becoming heavier each week. Then comes the most exciting moment. One by one, the fruits begin changing color. Green becomes yellow. Yellow becomes orange. And finally, rich shades of red, depending on the variety you're growing. Here's a simple habit that can dramatically improve your harvest. Pick ripe tomatoes regularly. Leaving fully ripe fruit on the plant slows new production, while frequent harvesting encourages the plant to keep flowering and setting more fruit. Water consistently, especially during hot weather, but avoid soaking the leaves whenever possible. Watering the soil instead of the foliage helps reduce the risk of common tomato diseases. With plenty of sunlight, fertile soil, and steady care, just 2 or 3 containers can supply fresh tomatoes for salads, pasta, sandwiches, pizzas, and snacks throughout much of the growing season. We're getting close to the very top of the countdown now. The next vegetables don't just produce heavily. They completely change how you think about using vertical space, proving that sometimes the most productive part of your garden isn't the ground at all, it's the air above it. Number 6. Yard-long beans. The plant that stops people in their tracks. Imagine inviting a friend into your garden. They're expecting to see a few ordinary vegetables growing in containers. Then they notice something unusual. Long, slender bean pods hanging like green ribbons, some stretching well over a foot in length. The first question is almost always the same. What plant is that? Yard-long beans aren't just productive, they're unforgettable. Despite growing in a single container, they climb rapidly, wrapping themselves around a trellis, bamboo poles, or garden netting until the support structure disappears beneath a curtain of green vines. Then the harvest begins. Not with 1 or 2 pods, but with dozens. These beans thrive in hot weather, which makes them especially valuable during the peak of summer when some vegetables begin slowing down. The warmer it gets, the happier they seem to be. Here's the secret to keeping the harvest going. Never let the pods become old and tough. Harvest them while they're young, smooth, and flexible. Frequent picking tells the plant to keep producing flowers, which quickly become even more beans. One healthy vine can continue rewarding you for weeks, turning a single container into a surprisingly dependable source of fresh food. Because these plants grow vigorously, they appreciate rich soil, regular watering, and a sturdy climbing structure from the very beginning. Install the trellis before planting whenever possible. Trying to add support after the vines have spread often damages stems and roots. Yard-long beans are excellent in stir-fries, curries, soups, and steamed dishes, adding both flavor and impressive harvests to your garden. But remarkable as they are, there's one climbing vegetable that earns an even higher place on this list. Number 5. Pole beans. The vertical food factory. If container gardening had a perfect ambassador, it might be the humble pole bean. This plant completely changes the way you think about growing food in small spaces. Instead of spreading across the ground, every vine climbs upward, turning empty vertical space into a living wall of fresh vegetables. That's why experienced gardeners often say they aren't growing in one dimension. They're growing in 3. As the vines climb higher, clusters of flowers begin appearing along every stem. Soon those flowers become crisp, tender beans. And then something remarkable happens. The more you harvest, the more the plant produces. Few vegetables respond as dramatically to regular harvesting as pole beans. Skip picking for a week, and production slows. Harvest every few days, and the plant seems determined to replace every bean you remove. That's exactly why pole beans can remain productive for months under the right conditions. One container, a sturdy trellis, and a healthy plant can produce an astonishing amount of food over an entire growing season. To get the best results, choose a container that holds at least 10 gallons of potting mix. Place it where it receives 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every day. Water deeply whenever the top inch of soil begins to dry, and add compost or a balanced organic fertilizer every few weeks to support continuous flowering. As the season progresses, harvesting almost becomes a daily ritual. Every morning brings another handful of fresh beans ready for the kitchen. It's this combination of productivity, efficient use of space, and continuous harvests that makes pole beans one of the greatest container vegetables ever grown. But believe it or not, the 2 vegetables ahead don't just produce incredible harvests. They've helped countless gardeners rethink what a tiny balcony or patio is truly capable of producing. And the number one choice has one unique advantage that no other plant on this list can match. Number 4. Celery, the grocery store vegetable you may never need to buy again. Think about how often celery ends up in your kitchen. A few stalks for soup. A handful for stew. Fresh pieces for salads. Juices, stir-fries, pasta sauces, the list goes on. Yet every time you buy it, you usually use part of the bunch while the rest slowly loses its freshness in the refrigerator. That's one reason celery deserves a place near the top of this list. Instead of buying an entire bunch every week, you can simply step outside and harvest exactly what you need. The biggest surprise is how productive one healthy plant can become. Many beginners think celery is harvested only once. Not true. The secret is to remove only the mature outer stalks while leaving the young center stalks untouched. Within days, the plant begins replacing what you've harvested. Over time, one container becomes a reliable source of fresh celery for months. Like many high-yield vegetables, success comes down to consistency. Celery loves evenly moist soil. If the container repeatedly dries out, the stalks may become tough, stringy, or bitter. Adding a layer of mulch helps retain moisture and keeps the roots cooler during hot weather. A container at least 12 inches deep, rich compost, and partial to full sun are usually all it needs to thrive. Because celery grows steadily rather than all at once, many gardeners underestimate how much food it actually produces over an entire season. Then one day they realize, they haven't bought celery from the grocery store in weeks. That's when the value of growing it at home really becomes clear. But if celery quietly saves you money, the next vegetable explodes with color, heat, and productivity. Number 3. Hot peppers, small plant, massive harvest. Some of the highest producing vegetables in the garden aren't the biggest. Hot peppers prove that perfectly. Many varieties stay compact enough to fit comfortably in a container no larger than a bucket. Yet by the middle of summer, they're covered with colorful fruit. Green. Yellow. Orange. Red. Purple. Depending on the variety, a single healthy plant can produce dozens, sometimes even hundreds, of peppers during one growing season. One reason for this incredible productivity is their long harvest window. Unlike vegetables that produce one large harvest and finish, hot peppers keep flowering while older peppers continue ripening. It's like having several harvests happening at the same time. Here's a trick that experienced gardeners use. Don't be afraid to harvest ripe peppers regularly. Many people leave every pepper on the plant because it looks impressive. But removing mature fruit encourages the plant to put more energy into producing fresh flowers and additional peppers. Another common mistake is overwatering. Hot peppers prefer evenly moist soil, but they dislike constantly wet roots. Allow the top inch of soil to dry slightly before watering again. This encourages stronger root development and healthier plants. Place containers where they'll receive at least 8 hours of direct sunlight, feed them lightly every few weeks with a balanced fertilizer, and you'll be rewarded with months of colorful harvests. Whether you dry them, pickle them, make homemade hot sauce, or add them fresh to your favorite recipes, 1 or 2 plants often produce far more than most families expect. And now we've reached the final 2. Both are legendary among experienced gardeners. Both transform small spaces into surprisingly productive food gardens. But only one earns the title of the ultimate container vegetable. And once you understand why, you'll never look at an empty balcony, patio, or sunny corner the same way again. Number 2. Garlic, the plant that keeps feeding you long after harvest. Most vegetables are picked, eaten, and gone within days. Garlic is different. Its value doesn't end when you harvest it, it actually begins. Once properly cured, homegrown garlic can be stored for months, giving you a dependable supply long after the growing season has ended. That makes it one of the smartest crops for gardeners who want to grow food that lasts. And here's the best part. Garlic asks for very little in return. Plant individual cloves in autumn or early spring, place them in loose, well-draining soil, and let nature do most of the work. Unlike vegetables that need constant pruning or daily attention, garlic quietly develops underground while you focus on the rest of your garden. A container 10 to 12 inches deep is usually enough for a healthy crop, provided it has good drainage and receives plenty of sunlight. One mistake many beginners make is harvesting too early. When the lower leaves begin turning brown while several upper leaves remain green, that's usually the signal that the bulbs are approaching maturity. Pulling them too soon often means smaller bulbs that won't store as well. After harvest, cure the bulbs in a dry, well-ventilated place for 2 to 3 weeks. This simple step improves flavor and dramatically extends storage life. Homegrown garlic also offers something store-bought bulbs often can't: variety. From mild and buttery to bold and spicy, different cultivars bring unique flavors to your kitchen that are rarely found on supermarket shelves. Garlic may not produce harvest after harvest like leafy greens or beans, but it earns its place because every square foot of container space turns into months of usable food. And that brings us to the vegetable that best represents everything container gardening is about. Number 1, pole beans, the ultimate small space food factory. If there is one vegetable that proves you don't need a large backyard to grow an incredible amount of food, it's the pole bean. Everything about this plant is designed for efficiency. Instead of spreading across valuable ground space, it reaches upward. Every inch of vertical growth becomes another opportunity for flowers, and every flower has the potential to become another harvest. It's a living reminder that the most productive part of a small garden isn't always the soil beneath your feet, it's the empty space above it. Once pole beans begin climbing, they grow with remarkable speed. Within weeks, a simple trellis transforms into a lush green wall covered with blossoms. Then come the beans. At first, just a handful. A few days later, another handful. Then another. And another. Harvesting becomes part of your daily routine, and every time you pick fresh pods, the plant responds by producing even more. Few vegetables reward consistent harvesting as generously as pole beans. With one sturdy container, rich compost, regular watering, and a simple support structure, a single plant can produce an astonishing amount of food over the course of the season. More importantly, pole beans completely change the way you think about gardening. They prove that productivity isn't measured by the size of your yard. It's measured by how wisely you use the space you have. A tiny balcony can become a vertical garden. A narrow patio can become a source of fresh meals. A single sunny corner can become one of the most productive spots on your property. That's why pole beans take the number 1 spot. Not just because they produce heavily, but because they redefine what's possible in a container garden. And once you've experienced harvesting fresh beans from a wall of green that started with one small seed, you'll never underestimate a container again. Build your own container food system plus powerful ending. Now that you've seen all 20 vegetables, one thing should be clear. A productive garden isn't measured in acres. It's measured in smart decisions. The biggest mistake beginners make is trying to grow everything at once. They fill containers with random vegetables, hope for the best, and then wonder why the harvest is disappointing. Experienced gardeners take a completely different approach. They build a system. Instead of asking, "What can I grow?" they ask, "How can every container keep producing for as long as possible?" That's the difference between a hobby garden and a food-producing garden. Here's a simple strategy you can copy. Start with one climbing crop, such as pole beans or cucumbers. These turn empty vertical space into extra growing room without taking over your patio or balcony. Next, add one cut-and-come-again vegetable like kale, Swiss chard, celery, or arugula. These provide repeated harvests from the same plant for weeks or even months. Then include one root crop such as carrots, beets, or garlic. While your leafy vegetables are producing above the soil, these quietly develop underground, giving you a second wave of harvest later in the season. Finally, dedicate 1 or 2 containers to long-season producers like cherry tomatoes, bell peppers, or hot peppers. These continue rewarding you long after many other vegetables have finished. When you combine these 4 groups, something remarkable happens. You're no longer waiting for one big harvest. You're harvesting something almost every week. Sometimes leafy greens. Sometimes beans. Sometimes tomatoes. Sometimes fresh roots. Instead of empty containers between harvests, your garden becomes a continuous cycle of fresh food. There's another habit that separates highly productive gardeners from everyone else. They don't plant everything on the same day. Every 2 or 3 weeks, they sow another small batch of fast-growing crops like arugula, lettuce, green onions, or bok choy. This simple technique, known as succession planting, spreads harvests across the entire season instead of creating one short burst followed by empty containers. Another game-changing habit is keeping your containers healthy. Healthy soil grows healthy plants. Mix compost into your potting mix, feed heavy-producing vegetables regularly with organic fertilizer, remove yellow or damaged leaves before they attract pests, and water deeply instead of giving plants a light sprinkle every day. These small habits may seem ordinary, but over an entire growing season, they often make the difference between an average harvest and an exceptional one. Most importantly, don't be discouraged if every container isn't perfect. Every season teaches something new. Even experienced gardeners continue learning because every climate, every balcony, and every garden is a little different. The key is to start. 1 container becomes 2. 2 become 5. Before you know it, you'll be walking outside with a basket instead of a shopping list. And that's one of the most satisfying feelings gardening can offer. If this video helped you discover new vegetables to grow in small spaces, let me know in the comments, which vegetable are you most excited to grow this season? I'd love to hear what you're planning because gardeners always learn from each other's experiences. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every week, we share practical, science-backed gardening tips to help you grow more food with less space, less waste, and more confidence. And don't miss the next video. We're going to reveal 10 unusual vegetables that produce even more than many of the plants on today's list, hidden gems that most home gardeners have never tried but can completely transform a small space garden. Some thrive in extreme heat. Some keep producing when other vegetables stop. And one can feed you for years from a single planting. Until then, happy gardening, and I'll see you in the next video.